Hi, welcome back. Today I'm going to be talking about an Alaska Native civil rights leader, Elizabeth Peratrovich. I was asked to give a speech a few years ago, I think it was about 2 years ago now, at the Seattle Indian Health Board with the Clinton and Haida, Washington chapter about Elizabeth and her life and what it meant to me and why I think she's such an important figure in the Native community, but also in the scope of American history and even civil rights throughout the world. So today I'm just going to read the speech that I gave 2 years ago because I think it's still relevant today. So you're going to hear me tell a little bit about my story growing up and how I learned about Elizabeth and how I relate to her even today. And I hope you'll learn a few things about her as well and the work that she did on behalf of all of us and creating a better, more equal and just society. So if you see me looking down, I'm just looking, I have my speech pulled up on my laptop here and I'm actually going to be reading it off of there because I don't have it memorized. It's a pretty long speech and I'm not that good. So here we go. I was born a time-release criminal. Kind of like a sleeping pill that gradually releases more and more medicine so it doesn't hit you all at once and kill you. Only with me, it's my blackness and my Indianness that doesn't hit you all at once. I've been progressively treated as more and more alien to this political and societal structure that I was born into. When I was a baby, I was seen as innocent and cute. I had committed no crimes. I couldn't read or write yet, so I was merely an extension of my family, like everyone else born into this world. When I was in elementary school, the first dosage of my time-release criminality hit suddenly. I remember I was playing on the playground with a group of friends. I was in 3rd or 4th grade, and the recess bell rang to let us know it was time to go inside. As me and my friends were running towards the door, heading back inside, this boy from my class yelled out at me for everyone to hear, "You look like a brown piece of shit." This boy's remarks stopped me in my tracks. My friends looked at him, they looked at me, some other kids laughed nervously, and some were somewhat amused by his colorful language. None of the adults were close enough to hear any of this happening, and I was so shocked and embarrassed that I wasn't going to go tell on him anyways. I didn't know what to do. That was the day that I learned my skin color was a crime. In college, in the middle of the most liberal county in Kansas, I was out to eat with my fellow Haskell University classmates. We had just got done watching Kansas University basketball at the Buffalo Wild Wings restaurant downtown. KU had won, it was March Madness, and so this particular win meant that we were heading for the Elite Eight. As we were leaving the Buffalo Wild Wings, hyped up and excited about the game, we were piling back into my friend's car, and I was the last one getting into the car. And as I set one foot on the floor of the back seat, I was shot in the back with the next dose of that time-release conviction. Across the narrow, small-town street, as a white pickup truck drove by us, a KU student leaned out of his driver's side window and yelled at me at the top of his lung, calling me a name that I had only heard in rap songs and documentaries about the 1960s. I literally looked around in shock, looking for who he could have been talking to. It took me a moment to soak in the fact that he was talking to me because my mother named me Michiana, and I had never been called anything else, at least not that directly. Even the boy on the playground had been a little more tactful with his ignorance. But that was the day that I learned my skin color meant I was a target for crime as well. I have a million other stories just like these, some so minute and insidious in nature that unless you were there you wouldn't understand that it was racist. Others more overt and proud in nature that you would have trouble denying it for what it is. In the last few years, I've been given a dosage that's shown me how the place at which my cultures intersect the tradition of activism and my embrace of that tradition makes me a criminal. I'm a criminal because I'm Black and an activist. I'm a criminal because I'm Native. And and an activist. I'm a criminal because I am brown and I speak about being brown, and I encourage others to speak about their brownness as well. This is new territory for me because up until a couple years ago, I wasn't someone who I would consider to be woke or a well-informed citizen. I was smart, but not in the way that becomes dangerous. Now, I am the slave who learned to read. I am the Indian who learned how to speak English. I use my intelligence to engage in what I want to know and to challenge what I think I already know. But who we are today is who we've always been. Our people have always been what we now recognize as activists. The definition of activist is a person who campaigns to bring about political or social change. Today, we celebrate one such person, Mrs. Elizabeth Peratrovich. She's an amazing Tlingit woman who stood up for racial equality during a time when it was not popular or easy to do so. She did it because it was the right thing to do, whether it was easy or not. Elizabeth, like me and like all other brown people, was born into a life destined to be a criminal. Because being born brown means you're either going to end up in jail or end up being an activist. Sometimes both, and the order of those can vary. And if they can't criminalize you in a literal sense, they'll criminalize your reputation. Elizabeth Peratrovich took on this challenge. She took her proud brown skin to college. She was married in her brown skin, bore beautiful brown children, and marched her brown skin into the legislative session in Alaska in 1945 to represent for all other brown-skinned people who lived before her and who would live after her. Who are these people, barely out of savagery, who want to associate with us whites with 5,000 years of recorded civilization behind us? Senator Alan Shattuck's words echoed through the legislative session and leveled a careful, methodical attack on Elizabeth's sensibilities, the same way that playground insult was meant to chip away at me. But with years of resolve behind her and the poise of a woman on a mission, Shattuck's wave of racist rhetoric couldn't crack the composure that we've all had to acquire in proportion to our relative brownness. As an Alaska Native woman, her ears were numb from the sting of all the racist remarks she'd heard in her 34 years of life. She was born in adversity. She was raised in the face of stereotypes. She was bred for survival against bigotry. She was formed in determinate opposition to the hate cast against her. She was used to the handcuffs of hatred and ignorance that would paint her as innately criminal. She recognized that her very existence as a Native woman was inconvenient to a world which embraced the doctrines of genocide, segregation, and assimilation. Now, Elizabeth was only 5'5". She wasn't rich, and she wasn't white. She could have easily resigned herself to the opinion that she was powerless. She chose not to accept that, and instead used her attributes as leverage to create a better, more equal future for thousands of people and the many generations of people yet to come. I think it's important to note those attributes and to note the kind of world that Elizabeth was living in at the time, because it gives us a better understanding of where she was coming from and what drove her to take on the challenges that she did. A fun little piece of trivia and an ironic, poetic fact about Mrs. Peratrovich is that she was born on the 4th of July in the year 1911. That's right, our beloved civil rights leader was born on Independence Day. It's almost as if she was made for her moment. But to paint the picture for you, in 1911, that's only 44 years after the United States bought Alaska from Russia, and 13 years before Congress would grant citizenship to all Native people. At this point in time, if you participated in your cultural practices, if you spoke your languages, you were considered by law to be uncivilized. So as she was growing up, Elizabeth was part of a world that was grappling with its identity as it pertained to statehood, geopolitical alliances, and structural racial bias. In February 1945, at the time Elizabeth testified in the Senate, it had been just 4 short years and 2 months since December 7th, 1941, the day that will live in infamy, the day that Pearl Harbor was bombed and marked our country's entrance into World War II. On this world stage, America was battling against a racist, xenophobic dictator named Hitler, who proudly propagated the supremacy of one race overall. And while the US may have been on the right side of history in the case against Hitler and his regime, it was failing its indigenous population in the same regard right here on its home soil. So on that day, Elizabeth wasn't asked to speak. She was compelled to. She was compelled to speak during the public comment portion of the session after all of the men in the room had been given the time and space to voice their opinion on this issue of equality. And she didn't waste her opportunity. In pointed, true Tlingit fashion, she addressed Senator Shattuck's remarks head on and said, "I would not have expected that I, who am barely out of savagery, would have to remind gentlemen with 5,000 years of recorded civilization behind them of our Bill of Rights." Okay. Now this quote alone could have earned her a place in history, and in fact is the quote you most often hear associated with Elizabeth Peratrovich. But nonetheless, she persisted to school the gentlemen of the Alaska Territorial Senate and those of us who are fortunate enough to have come after her with words that still ring true today. There are three kinds of persons who practice discrimination. First, the politician who wants people to remain less than others so he can promise them something. Second, the Mr. and Mrs. Joneses who aren't quite sure of their status or who are nice to you one day and can't see you on other days depending on who they're with. Third, the great Superman who believes in the greatness of the white race. This attitude is wrong. When we celebrate Elizabeth Peratrovich Day, we're not just celebrating a day for a native hero or even just Elizabeth herself. We celebrate Elizabeth Peratrovich to recognize what she did for us and the fact that she did it despite her discomfort. That day, she represented women, she represented Tlingit and Haida people, she represented all minorities in this country who are treated as less than in the very spaces that they helped to build. That day was a culmination of events and experiences and lives lived and yet to be lived, and it was a singular event that encompassed something much larger. She spoke that day with you and me in mind. She wanted equal housing, schooling, and jobs for her community and her family, but she was looking at the bigger picture too. She was thinking of those dehumanizing moments when slurs are shouted at our college students, who despite their education are still seen as not enough. She was thinking of our kids who are labeled thugs and targeted by authorities simply for their style of dress or the color of their skin. She was thinking of Standing Rock, where even wanting to protect our water and our ancestors' lands is a criminal act. But the good thing about being born a time-release criminal is that it's not a sleeping pill. This medicine is a progressive awakening. This medicine, this skin, was made to grow and thrive, even and especially in the darkest of places. People may label you, they may see you as savage, criminal, and even illegal. They can pass laws to steal from you, to kill you, or to cage you. But the thing that they hate, that beautiful brown skin, can never really be criminal, killed, or caged. Not if you know your history, and not if you know what you stand for. And that's what Elizabeth taught us that day. Elizabeth's legacy is our legacy. Gunash Chish, Mrs. Peratrovich, for your gift of strength and for your gift of freedom. I encourage you to look up more about Elizabeth Peratrovich. Unfortunately, there aren't a ton of resources out there, but there is definitely enough to give you a base knowledge about who she was and to learn more about her. Thank you guys for checking back in on my channel. I know I don't post too regularly, but I like to post when I feel like I have something important to share, something to say, and something that I think will have a positive effect. So if you like this video, subscribe to my channel. Also check out the other videos I have listed. There's a pretty wide variety of stuff that I have going on, and I'm always looking for new ideas on what to post, what you guys want to learn about. So leave me a comment below and let me know what you think. Also, feel free to share this video on your personal Facebook page, on your Instagram, and I'll check you guys next time.